first thing we gotta think about. What weapon is Uncle gonna give these guys?
Bibs!
Well, we know he's not gonna give him a sword. If he's going to, he would be carrying it.
And speaking of BAMs, we have some BAMs in Link's house. Those are always nice to see for your escape. Looks like we have, oh wow, 2 pendants. 2 pendants in the light world. You know what that means.
Yep, that is the last thing you want to do when you want to see when you check that first light world map check. The bombs, however, in Link's house, very nice, and the bow on Uncle, that is a lovely starting weapon. One of the easiest to manage.
I think the D is actually the weapon you want to find most early, just because you don't have to worry about where that could be later on. Because the bow can be a very tricky thing to find when you're in Go mode. There are not a lot of restrictions on where the bow can be.
Yep, and to top it all off, in terms of quick escapes, I think the bow provides the opportunity for the fastest version of it.
I don't disagree.
Now the interesting part here is whether either runner will take that bow directly to Eastern Palace after escape, or if they'll stick to the more standard running over to Kakariko.
If you find a sword in escape, I think you have to consider it. But the big thing I was alluding to when we saw the two pendants in the light world, especially with them being a Tower of Hera and Desert, is that really puts the pedestal into the runners' minds.
It's true. The easier those pendants are to get, the more you start to think about it. Although, without knowing the crystal layout of the Dark World, it's tough to tell. Like, if TR were a pendant, that would destroy a lot of the options. And I guess for those of you who may be unaware, the bomb pickup in Link's house is important because there's a bombable wall in the back of Escape that if you don't have a bomb for, might have your first glove, might make you run all the way back through Escape for it. But having those bombs right off the bat means neither of them have to rely on RNG to get those bombs to check that.
That's actually one of the reasons why my least favorite weapon to see in Escape is Fire Rod, and we have Blue Mail already!
Yep, and these two pretty much exactly synced up on picking Zelda up there. That was wonderful.
So, based on what we've seen so far with movement and combat, the two of these runners look like they're pretty equal in terms of speed tech, so it'll all come down to who is better at routing. And although it's too early to say too much at this stage in the game, I think SDiezal has more experience in routing than a Yuveling, but only time will tell.
Yep, and it's always interesting with this standard mode tournament versus the old open ones that we've done in the fall and Keysanity, is that you kind of get this early part to just watch the runners in the exact same situation, doing the exact same things and how they go, whereas in the open and etc. tournaments, you're kind of more, they could diverge immediately and never match up.
And that's actually one of the reasons why open can be exciting as well. Not to say that putting these runners in new situations with random weapons and escape isn't exciting, because it certainly can be watching runners have to deal with, say, a bomb escape or a fire rod escape, or even a Kano Samaria escape.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable how much these tournaments have switched around between modes in terms of just keeping different situations around. It has made it a lot easier to keep following and seeing things that you maybe never thought you'd see before.
It
So,
sure has come a long way from VTA 18, when the only mode was standard Uncle Assured.
very true. I hopped on board around V24, which had a bit more than that, and there's still been like 5 new modes added since I started, so...
And SDiezal coming up on the back of Escape, so we'll get our first look into what kind of seed we will have.
Yep, and both
3
of them dealt with
chests.
Keyrat very well.
Bunch of nothing.
Disappointment room.
Another note is that those rupees that were in the back of Escape are the first rupees that we've seen, so our runners may need to come back for bottle money, of all things.
It's true, you only need to get 50 before Kakariko, or during Kakariko, to have enough, so usually you're gonna find it, but sometimes the seed is mean when it comes to money.
Oh,
that's
wow,
lovely.
look at that! We have bow and silvers in Escape. Well, combat just became trivial, folks.
Yep, several of the bosses, pretty much any enemy, all just gonna go down like they're nothing. Looks like both are gonna be headed over to Kakariko. SDiezal is going up here to check the Lumberjack ledge on the way.
Green rupees at the poultry. And magic for the crab, so nothing doing either of those two. Do we have an egg-required seed? Potentially, that is a very interesting item to have at the Lumberjack Cave. We have an ether medallion, so if either of the two of Mire and Turtle Rock wind up being crystals that require ether, then these runners will need to come back for Aga 1.
Yep, it's not quite as bad as seeing the mushroom or the powder or something up there, but it's pretty close. The heart piece in the mushroom spot that SDiezal ignores, Yuveling gonna go ahead and pick up.
I don't think picking up heart pieces early is bad. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I have seen some seeds where if you don't pick up the health you see early, you're gonna be stuck next to nothing for 90% of the run, so...
Another thing with this particular setup, since we have bow and silver arrows so early, I think you value arrow upgrades a little higher than you normally would.
Absolutely. Usually you got a bunch of the seed to build up the arrow count instead of wanting as many as you can to blow through them on enemies.
But this is one of those cases where I think you actually pick up every arrow upgrade you see.
I wouldn't say every. Like, if there's one in the back of Spectacle Rock, that's a big time sink for +5 arrows. Well, we get our first bottle, so Sick Kid can get knocked out while we're here in Kakariko the first time.
And I think we might see SDiezal and both of our runners pick up every single one of these blue rupee pots to try to maximize the chances of getting a bottle vendor money. Plus, they may also need to buy bombs.
Yeah, they're currently about 3 rupees short of what they actually need to be able to buy the bottle vendor item. So they're going to be hoping for a rupee drop in the Kakariko well.
Hook shot in the well. That's a great item to see early.
It very much is. Good for movement and for combat.
If we find Death Mountain access, I make a beeline up there with that hook shot. And we also have Lord Banana in the well. All hail.
And SDiezal getting lucky amount of rupees there. That'll be just enough for him to buy more bombs so he can check the chicken coop while he's here.
Shield on the bottle vendor.
Checking that bush there, which is a 50-50 chance of having a bomb. See if you can avoid having to buy them just yet. More pieces of hearts. Hooray!
So with a lack of early money, after you're done with Dam, you may actually want to consider just going straight to Eastern Palace to try to route Zora with Catfish. If you get the money, I think it's a fantastic idea to do an early Zora check. But if you don't get early money, I feel you want to put off Zora as long as possible.
Yeah, pretty much. If you have to farm for rupees, hey, there are flippers, which kind of point towards Zora. But yeah, you kind of want to avoid farming for rupees the best you can, because it's very slow.
You don't want to see... And flippers early is something that I don't like to see just because of that exact reason. Plus, the runners do not have the Moon Pearl yet either, so they couldn't route in. Well, now they can. Now they can, because you need Moon Pearl to be able to break in there, but flippers to go in naturally, so we might see them go up there. Oh, speaking of arrow upgrades, that's an arrow upgrade our runners will not be getting.
Very true. Also, kind of a side note of anecdotal stuff. When you get flippers and hookshot early, a lot of times that does tell you that you're going to be doing Aghanim for Dark World access and using that hookshot and flippers to get across to West Dark World.
My goodness, look at this sync we have going on still.
Yeah, these two are moving pretty much the exact same pace through the seed so far.
This should be really exciting.
Yuveling went ahead and checked the stun prize, which is a heart, which is not the best, but it's good to see.
Lift upgrade at the dam.
Yep, so there's their Death Mountain access if they're willing to sequence break the Dark Rooms.
I know SDiezal knows how to do some of the Dark Rooms. I'm not sure about Yuveling. A little surprised SDiezal isn't picking up that capacity upgrade because it's not far out of the way, and they are valuable, given that silver arrows are going to be your primary weapon.
If you do have that never-ending balance of how much is my opponent going to go out of the way for, I need to minimize the stuff that I go out for that my opponent doesn't, versus this is actually valuable at this seed, let's do this. Bombos. And some money.
Wait. Oh, there's the lantern. Well, that's totally not gonna point SDiezal towards Death Mountain. Also, I noticed that that 300 rupees was held by the thief in Mini Moldorm Cave. How vanilla.
Very true. Looks like SDiezal is going to follow that lamp over to Eastern Palace, not Death Mountain.
This is an interesting call.
The thing is, with the bow start, it doesn't really point you to Eastern because you're logically not going to need the bow for anything there. But with bow and lamp, it does kind of tell you that Armos might be important.
It's definitely not a wrong call. It's just an interesting call to do this now. You might want to consider... Oh, there's the Quake. So all the medallions are accounted for, and SDiezal getting rewarded with a Moon Pearl in the back of a Sahasrara. So clearly going to Eastern Palace was the right call this time, but there's definitely a case to be made for going to Death Mountain first, just because with the hookshot you have Eastern access, and when you're very early in the seed, it's important to prioritize volume.
That's true. I think the idea here, and why I kind of agree with this play, is that there is... Eastern is a crystal dungeon you can full clear, and if you get the hammer or the mirror while you're here, that opens up even more of Death Mountain to you. So you might as well knock this out. You know you have to do it at some point anyway.
There's definitely merit either way. Some runners who would think a little bit more long-term would maybe try to route it with Palace of Darkness, but sometimes thinking really long-term in a randomizer can get you in trouble.
No, yeah, the seeds will often take your thoughts of what's going to happen an hour from now and just throw them over the cliff. Here we come to the room that I swear the developers must have made for the hookshot and then just forgotten to put after the hookshot in the game. It looks like Yuveling is also making this Eastern Palace play. So we got 3 items here. We have seen 1 in the big key. We'll be looking for 2 more items, hopefully finding them sooner versus the map and compass that nobody really wants to see. If you can get the items in these 2 chests, which we did not, you could avoid going to the vanilla big key spot, but as it stands, they'll be doing a full clear of the dungeon.
You usually have to go to that big key chest because it's either the big key or it's an item.
Yeah, you occasionally get the Dream Seed, but Armos has an item, which kind of supports that lamp and bow pointing that way theory. Watch it be a big 20.
Both of these runners, I'm sure, excited to see the lamp early. Because even if you know how to do dark rooms, they're just not fun.
Yeah, if you're proficient enough in them and you know your opponent well enough, sometimes you're happy to see a late lamp just because you can say, well, I'll probably have less trouble with the dark rooms, that might give me an advantage. But the earlier you see it, you just know that you can breeze right through everything. It feels really good.
SDiezal taking a little bit of damage, doing the anti-fairy skip, and gets rewarded with a piece of heart, which conveniently gets him his 4th piece of heart for a refill.
How nice of the seed. So now we head toward the back of Eastern and eventually the most joke of a boss in this entire game. Armos with silver arrows.
It is nice to have silver arrows for Armos, though, just because it makes the fight look so clean.
You have no need to worry about doing the quick kill and where you're shooting your arrows when. Nope, just 6 arrows, 6 dead, and you're done. So we'll be seeing very soon if this play pays off right now or if it's just getting the crystal out of the way and no payoff for the moment.
Very nice red Igor room for SDiezal, not having a sword to take care of all the enemies up front.
Yep, hookshot definitely helps there.
And rewarded with a single rupee for clearing the Armos out, but does need to get the crystal here anyway, so it does look like SDiezal will score the first crystal of this match. Early crystals usually don't mean too much in a race.
Yeah, the early game usually doesn't have a huge impact on the late game. It definitely has an impact that sets you up, but unless you make any like drastic mistakes, usually it's going to be the mid and end game that are making the difference. So now we make the next obvious play of heading up to Death Mountain, where there are 8, 9, 10 items they can get to, an 11th they can see but can't, or an 11th and 12th they can see but can't reach.
So I think what the runners want to see most on Death Mountain is a lift upgrade.
That or hammer. Definitely one of those two.
A hammer or
definitely
lift
not
upgrade.
Swords and cape.
Any sort of way to get a Dark World access so they can just hopefully not have to do Aga 1, or at the very least put Aga 1 off until just whenever it's convenient to do it. Preferably after getting the Ocarina.
And lift upgrade would be nice. Hey, there's
Ooh,
a fire
fire
rod.
rod.
I was gonna say lift upgrade might be nice because then you can route in East Dark Death Mountain while you're doing the rest of Death Mountain and check that medallion on T-Rock to see if that's gonna be a required ether from Aghanim. Top of Spectral Rock is just a big 20, so they don't really care about that ever.
Nothing there. So without a mirror, the runners will not actually be able to get to Hera. But they do have a hook shot, so they will be able to get over to the east side and get all the items over there. This is one of those locations that runners should be prioritizing very early on in the seed, because typically in the late game when you're looking for that one magic chest, it doesn't matter quite as much, but especially in the early game when you're still looking for items to be able to access dungeons, you want volume. Volume, volume, volume is what the early game is about.
Yep, and Paradox Cave is the most lucrative cave with 7 items inside it.
Hammer!
There it is!
So Hammer is Dark World access. I know it's a little bit early to think about, but because you have this side of Death Mountain complete, it might be a bit difficult to route Hera. So after checking Paradox Cave, there's definitely a case to be made for just diving Hera. It's normally pretty quick unless there's an item in the basement. It looks like SDiezal has found a sword in Paradox Cave as well.
Yep, that's a nice pickup. And like you were saying with Hera, yeah, it's a pendant, but it's a pretty quick check. You're here. I would be hard-pressed to argue not to at least try to give it a check. And after missing the bomb jump, SDiezal says, no, not wasting time going back up the stairs, trying to do it again. I'm just going around.
Meanwhile, Yuveling headed up to Zora with that 500 rupees.
Yeah, I'm interested he took this route instead of flipping down to the whirlpool from Hobo when he checked that.
He didn't have money at the time.
That makes sense.
Nothing doing in Waterfall Ferry. So we've got the ledge item and Zora itself. And SDiezal picking up the item in Spiral Cave and deciding he's had enough of Death Mountain, wants to pass on Hera for now. There's definitely a case to be made for that. But if something important does wind up in Hera, it will be difficult to route back up there.
It's true. And with the Sanctuary start, it looks like he's going to be headed over to the Village of Outcast area first. Going to go dive in over by Skull Woods, which is a full clearable dungeon right now.
Well, with the fighter sword and a lack of half magic.
Yeah, I'm not sure SDiezal's comfort level with low percent Moth, but from a logic standpoint, Moth is definitely acceptable as a source of progression.
This is actually beyond low percent, because in low percent, when you fight Moth, you would have Master Sword, and he only has a fighter sword.
True, but that red mail kind of boosts you up. I'd say it about balances out.
Probably. I think there's also a bottled fairy as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see SDiezal give it a try.
Okay,
and Turtle Rock for our third pendant, so that is going to be a big sigh of relief for both of our runners when they check their Dark World map. This has potential to be an extremely quick seed.
Yeah, and how we were talking about how the two Light World pendants kind of up the odds of Pedestal, T-Rock as a pendant kind of hurts them a whole lot.
Because T-Rock as T-Rock as pendant with the current setup means that the Cane of Samaria cannot be there.
And really, it doesn't change too much in terms of required items. You're looking at the mirror could still be on there, the flute could still be on there. There could be some silly sword shenanigans that lock the swords and mire with it requiring ether. But for the most part, it's not too much stuff that could be there.
So it's still definitely something to keep in mind. But with Turtle Rock, that's one less item that could be there. And it's a big one, too, because we've seen a lot of red canes at pedestal in this tournament already.
Not gonna lie, I actually haven't seen that one come up in any of the races I've watched.
Although it is just going to come up due to the sheer quantity of races that are going on in this tournament.
Absolutely. So far, nothing of note in Skull Woods. It is boring woods right now.
It does look like SDiezal is going to at least check the one more chest in Skullwoods, if not finish the dungeon outright. Meanwhile, Yuveling is in East Death Mountain and is going to finish Paradox Cave. So it'll be interesting to see if Yuveling goes into Hera.
Yeah, he was already a little bit more thorough with the early checks by getting that Zora and Waterfall and Hobo checks out of the way. So it'll be interesting to see if that thoroughness continues here into the Hera check, or if he also decides, let's jump to more items in the Dark World. Okay, so nothing worth doing in the front of Skull Woods, really. And SDiezal is going to the back of Skull Woods here.
Nice bomb jump by Yuveling.
Gonna go immediately for this under the bridge chest because there's really no reason not to. You know you need to pick it up anyway. Okay, and Yuveling is headed west on Death Mountain, so we should be seeing that Hera play coming up. Big key down there, so gonna have to route the big chest in while walking back out of the dungeon.
You never want to see Big Key in the back of Skullwoods. It's just such a pain.
It kind of depends on your situation, just because you're gonna have to walk back past the big chest anyway to get back out of the dungeon to go down to Village of Outcasts. But if you were planning on just saving and quitting out, then it's super annoying.
The SDiezal being able to take advantage of the silver arrows to take out all these Gibdos. Gibdos have very high HP, and being able to kill them in one hit is so nice.
Yep, and you always have the option of using the Fire Rod for that, but Fire Rod doesn't really help if you want to save magic.
Especially without half magic. So SDiezal coming up on the Mothula fight. Very cooperative Mothula so far.
Yep, Fire Rod's going to do Master Sword damage, so 8 hits with that. Fighter Sword would take 16. You could also pull out the Hammer and go for the 4 hits that takes.
That's pretty hard to do, though. It's hard enough hitting Mothula with a sword. SDiezal probably going to go through his fairy in this fight, unless he can exhibit some really fancy footwork, which it looks like he's doing a pretty good job of. Does manage to clutch out saving that fairy on half a heart, and is rewarded with a mirror!
That's a beautiful reward for jumping into that. that mirror is going to make routing so much more convenient for them. It also makes Swamp Palace fully clearable. They may choose to route that in while they go down to check Hype Cave. So at this point, all they actually need to complete this seed is the Flute, the Titan's Mitt, and the Cane of Samaria, with the potential for another medallion for Misery Mire, but we won't know that for a while. And we'll be heading to the big chest here, and we'll also be seeing what Yuveling gets, or enters, how Yuveling enters the Dark World. Didn't really get anything I noticed of note in Hera.
And we'll see what's in this big chest.
Yep, taking the rarely seen vanilla route to this chest
Just a
for
big
20 bucks. Okay, and looks like Yuveling is going to follow along into the Village of Outcast portal.
Now that route that SDiezal takes, that's a very common route if you are coming to check the big chest from the back of Skullwoods, because you're going to be passing by the entrance that takes you towards the vanilla-ish route, and the bomb jump to get to the big chest in Skullwoods can be pretty finicky.
That's a Cane of Samaria on the bumper ledge. We're going to need to find a cave. And that's a kind of mean, kind of nice spot to see, to have that item, because cave can be pretty much anywhere that Samaria can be, but you might forget it's there.
We have a shield upgrade at the chest game. I'm pretty happy to pick up 2 of those, or even all 3. All 3 can be a big relief if you need to end up checking Laser Bridge and Turtle Rock, but in this case, it's not very likely with it being a pendant.
Yeah, and Shield 2 is kind of nice for the sake of this blind fight that I'm sure is going to be coming up before long, because it does block some of the fireballs, and no matter your mail level, the fireballs are going to do 1 heart of damage.
This Thieves Town play is a good dig, though. It's got pretty good item density. You need to complete it. The Thieves Town is unique in that it requires very, very few items to complete.
Yeah, really the only requirement on the dungeon is you need the hammer to check the big chest, which may not even be required all the time.
And you do also need a lift upgrade to finish the dungeon. But I think, strictly speaking, the only
you don't need a lift. If you kill all the enemies in that room, that door on the left opens up, and you can just walk right around that big old block.
You're right. Well, you learn something new about this thing every day, don't you?
Pretty much. It's one of the reasons why this ends up being the first play of so many people into the Dark World, is because you really don't need anything. And there's the added benefit of the fact that Blind only takes 9 hits no matter what weapon you're using, so having Fighter Sword is no worse than having Gold Sword. SDiezal doing one of my favorite things to do in this hallway when I don't have boots, of just using those torches to speed up movement a little bit with repeated hook shots.
And movement with the hook shot is one of those things that separates great players from good players. It's something that's very easy to forget about, especially if you're not versed in vanilla.
Yeah, I'd say even if you are versed in vanilla, usually you have boots well before you get the hook shot. So even at that point, it's not something that people are necessarily super up to date with in terms of long-term usage.
It's still used quite a bit, though. Oh, there's the book. So that's desert access.
Yep, that also, I'm sure, makes them regret just a little bit not doing Thieves Town before Skullwoods.
Because
If
now,
they'd done it the other route, yeah, if they'd done it the other route, they could have just mirrored out of Skullwoods, checked Pedestal, known for sure if they need pendants or not, had that out of the way.
and now with Skullwoods done, Pedestal is going to be almost impossible to check until the late game.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely still choose to check it here, but it becomes a pretty slow check for something that you aren't even getting the item from. Yuveling coming up on his Mothula fight. We'll begin that mirror here shortly.
Oh, there's the Ocarina. That actually makes checking Pedestal a little bit better. Because SDiezal has the mirror, so then he can activate the flute, and then go check Pedestal and flute to wherever he needs to go next. He could very easily just leave a portal by... He could very easily leave a portal by the bird statue, walk back up to the pedestal and check it if he wants to, and then just resume his Dark World. So if it essentially cuts the time required to check the pedestal in half, because you don't have to take the backtrack back. So I wonder if he'll take that into consideration.
Although with that flute, pedestal is dead. Because flute and mirror were only items that T-Rock doesn't require that could be there. All we need now is a cane, which we know where it's at, and cape that blocks it can't be on pedestal because you need it for T-Rock. I guess there's the fringe situation of sword upgrade on pedestal that you need to get into Aghanim. No, because you would have to get the cape. So yeah, it's completely dead now.
Does there have to be a key in... Does there have to be a key at the laser bridge?
Also, chat pointing out that there is the possibility of boots on there, but I believe there doesn't have to be. It's very rare to not see one there, though.
But SDiezal going to be activating this flute immediately because he's right there. Nice mirror bonk.
I hate
That's
trying
easy
to
to do,
mirror
though.
there. So at this point, I got to imagine that as soon as he gets Titan's Mid, SDiezal is probably going to be checking that medallion on Meyer. For now, he's going to finish up these overworld checks and then probably start knocking out Swamp and Pod, which are both full clearable currently. More pieces of heart.
So... Are we just missing Cape at this point?
One thing that I forgot when I was listening earlier, we do still need Titan's Mitts as well.
We do need Gold Glove, yes.
And then kind of the one lifeline of Pedestal, which chat brought up, is if Meyer requires Ether, the boots could be on Pedestal. So there's still a little bit of a lifeline for those who really love to see the ped seeds, but right now we're just looking for a cape, a mitt, and then eventually at some point a sword. The question coming up is, do you go ahead and dip into the swamp while you're down here at Hype Cave? Or do you kind of pass it by to go check Pod first?
I would go into swamp. You're right there. You're right there, and you're going to be able to check all but... I think you check all but west side, and then if west side has 2 items, you go back for it, and then just mirror out.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that. You want to try to go mode swamp, but there are 6 items there. It's hard to pass that up when you're trying to look for those last few.
That is not the direction of swamp, though. It looks like SDiezal wants nothing to do with swamp. He might be checking Hype Cave first, right?
Hype Cave first, yeah.
I'm so used to players routing this with the starting location. Because that's something you'll see a lot, especially with hammer starts. It's a digging tool. And a sword upgrade. Pretty sure SDiezal's happy to see that.
Yep, that's one item knocked off the go mode list. The worst feeling is go mode sword, so definitely happy to see that. And now headed south.
Because we all know that when you're missing a sword for go mode, the right play is to go into Ganon's Tower, but if there's not a sword in Ganon's Tower, it feels so awful.
That's very true. You clear the whole thing and then just sadness awaits.
But it does look like SDiezal is headed in the swamp.
It does, and Chad pointed something out that I apparently had missed earlier. Kind of sounds like there might have been a sword on Hylia Island that I don't believe SDiezal has seen since he didn't do Hobo.
And speaking of SDiezal, props to SDiezal for playing the Song of All Our People in the dam while unlocking the entrance to swamp.
This first chest will always be a key. It hardly even counts as a chest. And then we got a bunch more chests to try to find 6 items in.
The only times you'll ever see that chest be anything other than a key is in major glitches or in key sanity.
Now, if you were these runners, you probably want to get the cape to get that Cane of Samaria before you find the mitts. Because mitts open up a lot of places. If you find those first, you can get lost on a sidetrack of hours. Well, for these runners, not literal hours. I would be very surprised if something managed to force them to take more than 2, but... yeah, you're definitely kind of hoping to see that cape first, and then you find your mitt shortly after in one of the places you already have unlocked. Check Mire, not Ether, and that's kind of the ideal route. Not necessarily the likely route, just the one they're hoping for.
At this point, it's really just a big search for those mitts. Gold Glove does not actually have as many restrictions on it as you think, so it can be extremely pesky to find. I've seen way too many gold gloves in this tournament in just awful places like Sahasrara.
Yeah, I feel like V29 did a pretty good job of upping the randomness of those mitts, because you used to see them pretty early every time. And especially getting that big key early, it looks like SDiezal is going to go ahead and do left side right now. You're not going to have as much reason to come back in here if you have that early big key, so you might as well just get it out of the way right here and now.
There's definitely merit for doing this, because if there is something important back there, it is faster to do it now. But it's a risk-reward thing. There's a lot of that in Not just this randomizer, but any randomizer. And that's what makes randomizer so exciting. Not just from a viewer perspective, but from a player perspective, is just not only being good at executing within the engine itself in new ways that the vanilla game will never test you on, but just the decision-making that goes into how you play the game. And this game can definitely get inside your head.
Oh yeah, it absolutely can. You can get sent on a wild goose chase for pretty much the entire run, and then find the item you were missing was just chilling in Nagina's cave right at the beginning.
And speaking of upgrades, I think it would behoove SDiezal, after he's done with Swamp Palace, to make a detour over to Lake Hylia Island to pick up the sword upgrade that is over there.
Yeah, I don't believe he actually knows that's over there, because he never did a flipper up to Hobo. Only Yuveling did that.
Did you see what was in the back of Swamp?
I did. Now
That's a cape.
We're just looking for those mitts, hopefully.
That's a cape. That could be bad for Yuveling. So all we need for go mode now is a gold glove.
Yep, at least pending the Meyer medallion. If Meyer requires ether, then we need the boots, and then we open up a whole can of worms.
But it'll just be Bombos, so all of us can get to bed early, Kappa.
Surely, if Randomizer is known for anything, it's for being friendly and not making you do as much as possible. We got a few more chests here in the swamp.
So Yuveling doing a
And
good
then
job
we'll-
managing Meyer, or not Meyer, Blind. Getting a little ahead of myself.
Yep, got a little bit off script, but did not take very much damage, and it's a very tough fight when you're not on that script.
Anybody who's died to Blind knows all about managing that fight when it's out of your control.
Yuveling activating his flute while SDiezal heads into Argus here. One of the more boring bosses in the game.
At least SDiezal has Master Sword, so it's not menu percent Argus. Menu percent Argus is one of the most tedious things in this game.
Yeah, I refuse to do that unless I have literally no sword when I'm here.
You do spins with fighters?
Yep, I want to say it was Carcat, who's one of the devs of Randomizer who spends a lot of time on this stuff, had mentioned that it was actually faster to do the spins than hammer. So I started doing that, and I was like, oh, this is not just a little bit faster, but it's much less boring.
Nice snipe with the silver arrows by SDiezal. Hitting Argus with the silver arrow is not the easiest thing to do.
Not at all. And there is our second Pyramid Fairy Crystal, so on the way up to Pod, can route that in with the Pyramid check.
SDiezal's routing in this seed has been absolutely on point.
Yuveling over here continuing to dig after winning the digging game to try to get some more value out of it, some more money, etc.
And your prediction is correct. It does look like SDiezal is going to route in the big bomb. Do not blame him for this decision one bit.
Yep, it makes for nice smooth routing and takes out a bunch of stuff all at once. Definitely definitely a good play. So now Yuveling needs to make sure to take that dip into swamp while he's down here. Obviously he would make it there eventually, but if he finds the mitts before the cape, that could make it very hard for him to gain any time back, so he'll have a lot more choices. He's been playing through the seed very well. He has a couple more checks in SDiezal, which might balance out depending on how mean these mitts want to be.
There's always one item that's in an ugly position. Net, first service.
Oh yes, now we can do everyone's favorite version of Aghanim. Probably won't do that, because it's much harder and nobody wants to deal with that in a race, but you could do it.
If you're TGH, maybe.
Watching Yuveling go through Hype Cave right now reminds me that they got the shovel there, and that has not been checked yet. If the mitts are on shovel, I'm gonna laugh a little bit.
If the mitts are on shovel, that's just a nightmare. Because the way the runners have cleared out the Dark World, that's a very isolated check. So it would be pretty challenging to get back there at this point. And it looks like Yuveling is going to take a dive into Lake Hylia to pick up that Tempered Sword, which is going to allow a little bit of time to be made up just in combat. You would be surprised how much time Tempered Sword saves in combat alone.
Oh yeah, and especially if SDiezal end up stuck on Master Sword through Ganon, you know, it's a big time save there. Not as big with Silvers, but still a pretty big time save. It's now going to route through Pod. I have taken after a conversation that happened in the tournament Discord to doing the Bowlock side first. Key logic in Pod says there have to be at least 4 small keys up front, so depending on what you get on the Bowlock side, you can potentially skip Vanilla Big Key and the drop chest here with routing that way. Two small keys in the compass so far, and guessing, oh, gonna go right side here. This will give him that information if he needs to bother with the Vanilla Big Key or not. And no one will have to do the potion glitch today. It's a sad day.
Nice mimic room for SDiezal. I have seen how much his gameplay has improved even since the last tournament. He's really come a long way. Ooh, that's a pretty nasty place for the big key.
That is, it's not the worst assuming you're out the dungeon like normal. Benefit of that is that with that big key and compass, he knows Vanilla Big Key is a small key, never has to waste time going there. But still, not the best place to find it.
We got a Hammer Yump from SDiezal? You don't see Hammer Yump too often in Randomizer.
Yeah, you saw it pretty much almost every match during the Key Sandy tournament, but in Standard, there are far fewer situations where it saves time.
Not enough time for that, SDiezal. You gotta reset the room.
He is in kind of the situation where it can save time, where you got that early big key, you got a spare small key. It lets you kind of route it a little bit more conveniently with less backtracking, but deciding missed it once, time to just skip on it.
Having a lot of trouble getting past the Helmasaur on the bridge. That can be a very pesky enemy.
Should we name that mini Helmasaur Gandalf for telling him that he shall not pass?
Good meme.
And 2 chests in the basement, and then the trip to Helmasaur, or the Dark Maze, and then the trip to Helmasaur.
Ooh, half magic. That's a good find.
10 bombs, not quite so good.
And it does look like Yuveling is doing the left side of Swamp Palace, so that's very good for him. So he will get that magic cape.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have gone back in even if he skipped to begin with, but saving the time by going here right away.
We have a mushroom in Palace of Darkness, another fetch quest item.
It actually brings something of note. When we left Swamp earlier, SDiezal didn't go over and check Bombo's tablet. If I recall, we got that book in Swamp, so definitely would have been an option. That could be important if the myths are over there.
I mean, they can be just about anywhere. A lot of places. Now, this could actually be a bit of a trap for Yuveling as well, because if he found that cape in the back of Swamp, he might think he's ahead.
That's very possible. You definitely have that moment, but given the seed, I feel like Swamp is a pretty straightforward play here. So it would be tough to assume you're ahead just from doing what is a pretty easy to make play. Everyone tries to avoid Swamp and left side of Swamp, but on a seed like this where you got the early flippers and hammer and hookshot and the mirror, and you're still routing right down the area anyway, it's a hard thing to resist checking.
So I would say at this point, SDiezal is probably about a dungeon ahead.
Yeah, it sounds about right. A lot of it will come down to if Mitts are in his way or if he goes to check some of these locations that Yuveling checked that he hasn't yet.
And Yuveling also had a pretty comfortable amount of health, 12 hearts.
Yeah, 12 hearts and red mail is more than enough in most cases, and pretty much, worst case scenario, the Master Sword Silverless is what you kind of hope for at that point.
And our runners do have silver arrows, and Tempered Sword is available. So Yuveling's Ganon fight should be pretty easy.
Yeah, there's always the things that go wrong, no matter how experienced you are, but red mail, tempered sword, silver arrows, you're in good shape. This Argus Spice for Yuveling is significantly faster just by virtue of each of those puffs only having to take one swipe instead of two. but gonna do
Yuveling
two
going-
spins instead of the
Yuveling
silver.
going for spin attacks as we have dual boss fights going on.
Yep, as SDiezal dealing with our masked Helmosaur friend. 17 hits of the hammer to break that mask off of him. But only one silver to finish it.
The silver arrows are by far the most damaging weapon in the game. To most enemies, they do 100 points of damage. And there's only one enemy other than Ganon that has more than 100 HP, and that's Vitreous. And SDiezal getting a B-Torp from the Helmosaur King. And we'll complete Palace of Darkness. Looks like we're going to take a trip back to the Light World.
Yep, lots of options on where to go. Not as many as there could be, since we're waiting on the mids, but looks like Shovel Spot is going to be the first one.
And meanwhile, Yuveling following in SDiezal's footsteps, taking the big bomb over to the Pyramid Ferry, and will probably enter Palace of Darkness.
So now here's an evil option. Mitts on Catfish.
Mitts on Catfish is possible, and it would be really tough to route.
Yep, it's one of those locations where there's maybe like 3 times you can route it in somewhat effectively, and even those are relatively slow.
But it does look like SDiezal is going to see what we get for our drugs, and just Art Container for drugs today.
So I'm trying to think of where they have available these mitts could be. They could be in Desert.
Are we getting a pedestal check from SDiezal?
It's possible. I'm guessing he's at least going to be going to check the Bumper Cave to get his cane, and then probably heading across the North Dark World route, but may route in a pedestal check.
No, he's just
Nope.
looking for North Dark World, it looks like.
Which is going to get him that catfish play, and then probably route that into Waterfall and Zora with the mirror. So even though he'll save some time over Yuveling's checks to those, he'll also be losing some time back that he already lost, and it'll get a little bit closer here.
Mitts as the Go Mode item is so awkward.
It is. All the places you usually think of, like, hey, I should go here to look for my Go Mode item. It's like, oh no, that's Mitts locked. So, Bumper Cave, going to be pretty straightforward. The only quirk here that some people don't know is that you can walk across this little top ledge along this pit here, so you don't actually need the hookshot to get through here.
And of note, the sign outside of Bumper Cave will actually tell you that you can get through that Bumper Cave without the hook shot.
If out of all the text boxes left in the game, it's one of very few that are actually still valuable information.
Although the rest of them are pretty funny.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I need to do, is actually just go through a seed at not blistering pace just to see what all the text boxes are. It'll make you appreciate the work that the dev team has put into this even more.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, since watching these races you don't see very many of them, all the text boxes that are still in the game are replaced with English text from the Japanese of the base game, and they've written something special for pretty much any character you can talk to, the signs, all that stuff. So there's a lot of work that's gone in that in races you don't ever see.
Looks like SDiezal doing a double take on that heart container. At first decided he didn't want to, and then, oh, I only have 10 hearts. I should probably grab this.
At the moment of, this is barely out of the way, why am I trying to skip this? Followed by the brief confusion of, wait, graveyard without mitts or boots, this is annoying. SDiezal, where are you going? You were right there.
Where are you going, SDiezal?
You just had to chop those bushes. Okay, he's back over there now. Now you got it. That location without mitts or boots is just so annoying, and even when you know the path is there, the ability to just kind of blank and be like, wait a second, how do I get out of here? Comes up pretty often.
Autopilot is quite the drug in just speedrunning in general, not just rando.
Yeah, pretty much. We're going to be checking Catfish, which is one of our increasingly small amount of locations that we haven't yet seen here.
If it's not Catfish, then where else could it be?
Desert is the big one. No one's been over to Agina's cave, checked the ledge, or done the dungeon.
No, Catfish just has the vampire skewer, so I imagine we'll see SDiezal mirror and then flute to desert.
Yeah, gonna check the waterfall and Zora here, which negative for him is he's not routing by the Hylia Island. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a little bit of time that Yuveling is getting back on SDiezal, since up to this point he had avoided these checks that Yuveling had already done.
Even after this, though, SDiezal does have a significant lead on just movement alone. SDiezal's movement has been so much cleaner.
Yeah, that's very true. He has been very smoothly moving through the world, which is part of the reason why there is the difference here. But this will make it pretty close here, with especially if he goes and checks Hobo and Bridge, or Hobo and the island after this.
No, he's going straight to desert.
Away.
SDiezal is probably going to feel like he's behind if mitts are at Agonaz Cave.
Yeah, probably. It's one of the less checked locations, but it's also Sphere 1, so you just feel like, oh, I could have had this instantly.
Although it is a difficult case to make coming here without boots.
Now, the torch item could give some valuable information here, too.
Boots!
Oh, there they are! Well, that opens up a couple more locations. Inconveniently, that King's Tomb that he was just by while routing through the graveyard.
Oh, boots in Desert Palace is actually pretty mean.
It is, but it does finally put a full stop to the pedestal dream.
But the more important thing is that SDiezal can breathe a sigh of relief that that's one less thing he has to worry about. Because if Ether is indeed required to get into Mire, he can go get it. He just needs to do Aga 1. And knowing that you have to do it, it helps a bit in doing it, because we've seen many a race lost because there's been thinking that egg is required.
Okay, so second item in desert was just a bomb capacity upgrade, so nothing worth there.
This is green pendant, though.
True. Sahasrara is always an option. And it looks like that is exactly what he's thinking. And then probably going to do Lamolus, Agina's Cave, and then go turn in the green pendant. And he's got, you know, both the options everyone looks for on Landmolus in the form of Silver Arrows and the Fire Rod. Either way, this should be a pretty smooth fight.
One other thing that's nice about having Mitts as your Go Mode item is you can do just straight Go Mode Ice Palace.
Yep, that's always a plus. Will also be a straight Go Mode Misery Mire, as
Misery
well
Mire's...
as...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, actually, I realized midway that there was no other dungeons that they got to Go Mode.
Misery Mire's not as big a deal because of... Typically, it takes a while to find the big key anyway. But Ice Palace Go Mode is huge because you just don't have to touch too many chests.
Sure. You gotta get the dream of the Mire big key in the first chest.
Nice Landmo kill by SDiezal.
Very nice indeed. There's
That
the
is a
green
lot
pendant.
harder to do than it looks.
Trying to think, if it's not green pendant or Agina, do we have anywhere else left it could be?
It could be tablets. Tablets have not been checked.
Yes. That's definitely an option. In SDiezal's head, it could be the Tower of Hera, since he did not check that while he was up there.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see him route up to Ether Tablet.
We're definitely getting pretty thin, though.
Well, it's not there.
Stealing the old man's life savings there. Link is kind of a
Going
monster.
to Sanctuary.
And get the Bonk Rocks check here. Unfortunately, can't do
Right.
Consume without going back to Dark World.
Right, Bonk Rocks haven't been checked. SDiezal might be thinking that because... Oh, there they are.
There they are.
That was probably on the forefront of SDiezal's mind just because of finding boots in desert. But at 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 49 seconds, we have SDiezal in Go Mode, which is a pretty quick Go Mode.
Well, maybe. We're gonna find out if it's Go Mode very soon.
True.
Or not.
He's doing ice first. This is...
I mean, you can Go Mode
can
Ice
still
Palace
go mode it.
regardless. You know where Ether is if you need it. But I definitely would have checked that Mire medallion first just to kind of be able to know if I need to route Aga in or not.
True. So at the very least, it's no mode.
Yeah, it's to the point where the runners can go through everything nice and smoothly, but they may still need to go out of their way for one specific item location. Yuveling is making his way to desert. The gap between the two has definitely shrunk down with the Zora check that went on.
Does Yuveling know Kano Samaria is at Bumper Cave, though?
Yes, he checked that earlier. He actually did the graveyard ledge and the bumper cave check all together right after Skull Woods.
So with Yuveling finding those boots,
yeah, his ideal situation would be if he doesn't bet on Green Pendant, if he just nopes out after the bomb upgrade to go check Bonk Rocks. This would become very close.
SDiezal having a little bit of trouble with the bomb jump, gone through a lot of his health, down to 2.5 hearts. Down to 1.5 hearts. This bomb jump can be difficult to line up, does get it. Down to a single heart, needs to be careful around these pits because one fall will kill him.
Yep, he does still have that fairy in a bottle from way back when, but does need to be careful for a little while if he doesn't want to take the time to use it. And Yuveling is noping out. Where is he gonna go? So we're getting a shovel check here. And then, if he saves and quits to Sanctuary, he's going to be right on SDiezal's tail.
Not just that, but Master Sword versus Tempered Sword could be... like, that could make a difference as well. So during these last 2 dungeons and then Ganon's Tower, that Tempered versus Master Sword is going to eat into SDiezal's lead.
Absolutely, and now Yuveling actually going to, looks like, route in grabbing that Cane of Samaria will probably mirror to Bonk Rocks immediately afterwards, and will join SDiezal in potential go mode.
But in that case, you would have to feel pretty good about a sub 120 go mode.
Absolutely, and especially the sword is in, the third sword was in a location that could definitely go miss, so you kind of had that feeling like maybe you have that advantage. Master Sword with silvers versus Tempered Sword with silvers isn't a huge time difference, but it's definitely a time difference.
It's bigger than you think. It's because Master Sword with silvers is still 28 spins. And you have to use spins on... you have to use spins the entire fight as opposed to tempered. And you can still spin with Tempered Sword for more damage as well.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a time save, just not nearly as big of one as without silvers. That's where Master Sword goes from slow to real slow. It's Bombos. It is officially go mode. Ether Medallion was a troll all along, just put there to make you wonder, do I have to do this? And then say, no, you're good. You got this.
Yuveling, unfortunately, taking a fall in Bumper Cave, getting to the Cane of Samaria.
You have to decide to just pull out the hookshot, do it the intended way.
This is one of the most generous V29 seeds I've seen in quite some time.
I'd say I saw a very generous one this morning. It wasn't a tournament race, but a ridiculously generous seed. But tournament-wise, this is definitely one of the nicer ones I've seen all week.
The only real troll was Boots in Desert. I think everything else was pretty much handed to our runners on a silver platter. And Yuveling is checking the Bonk Rocks and isn't terribly not terribly far behind, because Ice Palace is a pretty quick dungeon.
Even with Go mode, Ice Palace is still relatively time consuming, but about a dungeon behind. Could still very much be decided by Ganon's Tower in the Ganon fight.
But you do also have to remember that because Yuveling has tempered, that unless we see the fourth sword upgrade in G Tower, that SDiezal will be constantly losing time versus Yuveling's better sword upgrade.
Yeah, it's definitely something that could have an impact here going forward now that they're both in Go mode. SDiezal routing to try to avoid the cutscene room, but he's got a 50-50 shot if he has to do it now or not.
You just always want to do Vanilla Big Key last because of how long that wall takes. Oh, there's the Big Key.
There we go.
In Vanilla Compass.
So off we go to Vitreous, who, with silver arrows, is another kind of comically easy fight. Yuveling could save a little bit of time by routing that compass chest first, which sometimes is a good idea since a small key there tells you where the big key is. So it's a little bit longer of a walk to go back and check that chest on the middle, with a little bit of a payoff if that's a small key or big key. But I would assume probably going to be pretty similar routing here. Missing the cane dash a little bit there, then accidentally bonking a block because of it. Health is a little bit low for SDiezal, but with red mail, Vidi doesn't hit that hard and will probably be dead before he has any chance to actually do damage.
I believe there's still a fairy in the bank as well.
Yep, he's done a very good job of holding on to that fairy pretty much the entire run. And just machine gun down the eyeballs and a couple in Vidi.
100% accuracy on Vitreous. Not one wasted arrow.
Yep, and Yuveling right behind him on the way to Vidi. So with that, that's the 7th crystal, so we have a little bit of a game to play.
There are 22 chests in Ganon's Tower.
Yep, and one of them is gonna have the big key. If you're hoping for Yuveling to have a chance in coming back here, you're gonna want that big key to be very late for SDiezal and very early for Yuveling.
I will go with my usual number 9.
I'm gonna go with my usual of 22. For those of you in chat, if you are a supporter of the Speed Gaming Network, either by being a sub to any of the channels or having given 250 bits to any of the channels, you are entered into the chance to be on the leaderboards for the big key game. If you are not, then you are still welcome to play, you just won't be on the leaderboard. Now see, I like people. I just want this run to be closer. I want Yuveling to get up there and gamble Tile Room, and it to be SDiezal's last chest, and, you know, then it'll be a very, very close race. SDiezal enters up in the Turtle Rock portal, which is generally the quickest way short of Dead Rock blocking to get in there. Not going to bother checking Hookshot Cave for a sword upgrade, which A means he's very comfortable with Master Sword, and B limits the chances that he'll get another sword before the end here.
I have to say, though, both of these runners have been playing really well.
They have been. There have been very few issues in terms of any of the execution segments. The difference is pretty much just Yuveling routing in a couple of extra checks.
That and movement. SDiezal's movement has been, other than the incident in the graveyard, it's been crisp the entire seed.
And we check chests 1 and 2 with no small key, no big key, so kind of forcing them to go left afterwards. And Yuve is running through Ice Palace here. Going to be making probably pretty quick work of it. Chest 3 is 20 rupees, chest 4 a heart container. 5 is a small key, and 6 is also a small key. Headed to double firebar room, which will be chest number 8. Also a small key. And using the Canis and Mario strats on the switches here, you'll see a lot of runners who are familiar with NMG using the blue boomerang there, just because it's what you use in the NMG run. Kane is certainly a lot easier to do. It's a lot more consistent if you aren't 100% with those boomerang strats, so it works out pretty well. Chest number 9 just nets 3 bombs. Now we head into Randomizer room. The room pointless outside of Randomizer because it's just garbage in here in vanilla. And there it is in chest 11, I believe that was. After Yuveling gets a very nice IPBJ, much quicker on that. And we now head upstairs into the Gauntlet, going to check out a couple of Mimic rooms, and then head on over to the Gauntlet itself. This spike room going the route of going along the top there before dropping down to flip the switch instead of racing along the bottom. And yeah, that a bonus for SDiezal. He checked a couple extra chests in the big key room and ended up getting the powder out of it, which will make the rest of GT pretty easy for him to survive. Checking the safety room there, which is the location that makes bonking be in the logic, since it is the only way to get over there in the vanilla game, short of a bomb jump. And now into the Gauntlet. Several straight rooms of enemies with very RNG movement that you just have to try to kill as fast as you can. Silver arrows help, having Master Sword hurts, but overall, most of the enemies still die in one hit, even with Master Sword. It's just the red Zazaks here that are a problem. Developers decided at this point in the game that they really enjoyed ice and conveyor belts and BMOS. Yuveling has gotten his 7th crystal. He's on his way over to GT as well. With that big key location, there's really no kind of key gamble that he could make that could make up any time. So he'll be entering a bit later, and short of SDiezal having some issues at the end here, will almost certainly, and it is almost certainly his race to lose. There is the possibility that no one ever wants to think about, where you try to rush and end up despawning all the sprites upstairs in GT. That's about Yuveling's only hope, barring some catastrophic mistakes on Ganon. So here we go, the torch room. Nice and easy to knock out. As long as you don't hold up a little bit here, you got plenty of time to get up these stairs before that torch goes out. And safe. And SDiezal has 2 keys already, can ignore those mini Helmosaurs, just go ahead and go straight in here to bomb this wall. And he will be making his way to Trolldorm 2, who can be annoying, because if you make a mistake, you fall down, have to start the fight again. Never fun. And has a free heart piece in that chest. Didn't check either in the mini Helmosaur room for a tempered sword.
Little surprised he checked that chest, but not the ones in the Helmosaur room, especially the one on the left, because that takes maybe a second and a half to check.
Yeah, it's very rare that you see someone just jumping right into it like that without checking those chests. Just goes to show that SDiezal is very comfortable with his Master Sword Ganon.
Moldorm 2 chest having just $50.
Hey, it's slightly better than vanilla. $30 more that you'll never spend. Unfortunately for him, he did have to deal with the sped-up version of Moldorm there, but handled it cleanly, got through it without a fall. Anytime you see Moldorm speed up, you kind of get nervous. Phase 1 of Aghanim is a double here. Fortunately, 0 on the second phase.
That was a tough pattern to deal with, though. Nice double.
Oh, that was a wonderful double.
Masterful, masterful fight.
We have learned today that SDiezal is a master of geometry.
Geometry is hard.
It is hard. Now we're off to Ganon. 12 spins for phase 1, 12 spins for phase 2, 4 each for phase 3, and 4 for phase 3, and 4 silver arrows for phase 4.
SDiezal should be able to wrap this up. He has a lot of safety in the bank. I think he still has a fairy and... Yeah, I know he has at least a fairy.
Yep, and with how he was skipping chests, I can't imagine he's not very comfortable with this, even without the safeties. You always love when Ganon goes to the bottom there, where you can get those double spins in. Same thing with this top right corner.
God corner!
Yep, he got into phase 2 just in time to take advantage of this. The exact situation you want with Master Sword Ganon. Not quite enough hits in there to wrap it up, but it's gonna be pretty close.
The less time you can spend in phase 2, the better, because this is a very difficult pattern to dodge.
Yeah, phase 2 is definitely the hardest part of Master Sword Ganon, silverless or silvers notwithstanding.
And speaking of Master Sword Ganons, if you're looking to take your randomizer game from good to great, one thing I highly recommend doing is trying to complete a low percent of this game. It will put you in situations that you won't be comfortable with, but it will increase your comfort zone for future seeds. Because you will get seeds where you will not get armors. Anybody who's had to do a green mail seed will understand. It's not fun.
SDiezal getting the silverless hit in there, you know. Not intentionally, but it probably hurt Ganon a little bit. That'll do it. 4 silver arrows sunk in, and pending any falls off the ledge, this should be GG to SDiezal. And he finishes with an official SRTV time of 1:35:17.
That is a wonderful, wonderful time for this seed.
Absolutely, it was pretty friendly in some respects, but those mitts and, by extension, the boots were kind of time sinks.
But that will keep SDiezal's tournament hopes alive, and seeing him at 2-2, I really don't want to play him next week.
I don't blame you. I wasn't as familiar with these runners going in. I've seen them both around, but didn't know much about them, and SDiezal seems to be a very strong competitor to have to worry about.
He has a lot of experience with the Link to the Past randomizer. He's done well in every tournament.
Meanwhile, I want to give shout-outs to Yuveling, who has been just kind of pretty smoothly going through the gauntlet here, approaching the first torch room already. We're looking at probably less than a 10-minute difference, unless something goes crazy wrong on the Ganon fight.
And even Yuveling has played extremely well. Just when you get a veteran that knows how to route and has the execution that somebody like SDiezal does, sometimes 140 is not good enough.
Yep, there's always that seed where you can play really well and just have your opponent play just that tiny bit better.
Unfortunately, Yuveling is going to need to relight the torches after taking a couple of falls in the torch room. This room is deceptively difficult.
It is. You don't have a very big time window, especially if you want to be cautious about the sprite despawn. Buck gets through here, gonna head up this way. We'll see even less reason to check the chest than SDiezal had, already having that tempered sword. And I don't know if SDiezal normally does interviews. Gonna pop a
Usually
question on
does.
RTV if he wants to pop in.
He usually does them.
I'd imagine after a race like that, and with the quick finish there, that probably taking a couple minutes to catch his breath anyway. I know that races where you feel like it's going to be tight are always very stressful at the end.
Especially in a situation where the next loss means the end of your tournament.
Absolutely. It just all kind of compounds real quickly. Okay, and it looks like we are joined by SDiezal. GG, sir.
Hello, thank you, GG.
You played quite a game.
Dude, thank you. What a
Other than-
seed.
Other than getting turned around in the graveyard for a little bit, I don't think I saw a single major mistake.
Yeah, I totally forgot where I was going in the graveyard. I was like, oh yeah, I don't have the boots or the titans at this moment, so I have to backtrack. So yeah. What a seed this was. Holy cow.
Oh, absolutely. It was really quick.
Yeah. Not the definition, almost close to jet seed. I would say some consider it a jet seed, but if desert was a crystal, I would say 100% jet seed.
Absolutely. And that was a tricky look. Desert was very tricky to check because you had the boots inside of Desert and and there was nothing really pointing you there.
No, there wasn't. And the only reason that I actually routed in Desert was just for routing. I finished all the crystal dungeons that I could complete, and then I knew I had to switch to the overworld. So I started at Desert and then worked my way up, and it just really worked out from there. But yeah, this seed could have been like even better than it already was.
We figured it was going to be pretty quick when the game gave you bow and silver arrows in escape.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I was worried about a sword, but I found the master sword along the way of checking stuff, so that definitely helped out. I definitely would have loved another sword, but
You want to know where there's a really easy sword to get?
I do see that Yuveling found another sword. Where was the other sword at?
Lake Hylia Island.
I never even went over there.
And speaking of Yuveling, Yuveling just finished about 6 minutes behind you. So overall, the two of you took mostly the same path. It's just your execution throughout was better, and that's how you made up time on Yuveling the entire race.
Wow, very nice. Yeah, I had to figure. I figured it would come down to execution on this one. GG to Yuveling for finishing this one.
Because 141 is not a bad time at all.
141 is a really good time in my eyes. That's very, very good. And then like I was saying, like this probably could have even gone even much faster had I just went to Desert a little bit sooner. But nothing pressed me to go there earlier than I did, so definitely worked out.
One of the time saves you got pretty early on was you decided not to dip into Hera while you were already up on Death Mountain. Yuveling did dip in there for the 2 items.
I did think about it. I did think about going into Hera, and usually I will, especially if I find the hammer in Lucky Cave over there, but I just decided to skip it because it was a pendant dungeon and just hope that nothing was in there.
There's definitely arguments for and against it. The argument that we were thinking about doing the check is because if you don't do it then, it's really hard to route back there.
Yeah, that too. And like the same with like the whole Lake Hylia area. Like I never was prompted to go over there. I almost did. I think it was Mini Moldorn Cave had, I want to say it was like Moon Pearl or something. It had something in there that just swayed me away from that area completely, because I usually route that in pretty early, and I just said, nah, I don't want to go there.
So with that win, that does put you to 2-2, so your tournament life is still alive, but there are a lot of scary players at 2-2.
Yeah, there is a lot of scary players at 2-2, and I knew I had to win out going into this match, so it definitely heightens up your senses a little bit when you know you're pretty much winner go home kind of status. So I'm kind of on that until I go to the very end until brackets. So hopefully it works out. But this, like I said, this seed was amazing. This is like the best seed I've played in a very, very long time.
It's the kind of seed I would never deal, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was really good. But yeah, GG to Yuveling. Really good seed to especially race. This is always one of those fun ones to race as well.
Any seed that you can go especially fast is fun to race.
Yeah.
Those seeds that take 2 hours plus, they just take it out of you.
Yeah, they really are. Really motivation killers, and they're just exhausting too, because it not only just because it's a 2-hour seed, but that whole like majority of that 2 hours, you're just constantly thinking, where else do I need to go? What else do I need to check? This seed was very linear. You pretty much follow the progression, and it led you the whole way through, right to the end. You didn't really have to think outside the box too much with this seed, which makes it a lot easier mentally and just physically, because you're doing less. So, and I think the other thing I did was I finished Desert Palace, and I knew that it was a green pendant, and that's the only reason I finished it. And I completely forgot to turn it in because I got distracted with something else completely. So
we were wondering about that.
Yeah.
Not just that, but we were thinking that you might go to Desert a little bit sooner than you did, just because Desert tends to be a quick check.
Yeah, it could have been a quick check with the Desert Ledge and Agnes Cave, and I went to do all of that. It just hopes to find something, and I did end up finding the boots, and I think that's what it was. When I found the boots in there, it completely changed up my routing after I had finished it, because I intended on going straight to Salistrala, turning the green pendant, and then check the overworld from there. But finding the boots in there changed up my routing, so I went straight to Sanctuary, and lo and behold, the first location I checked that's boots locked is the Bonk Rocks, and sure enough, it had my Go Moto alignment. So that worked out perfectly.
Yuveling had that same idea. As soon as he found the boots, he went over to Bonk Rocks as well pretty quickly. And speaking of Yuveling, we do have a Yuveling in the booth. That was quite a seed, but you should have nothing to be ashamed about with that time.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was like a lot of things were planned. I had a route in my mind, and I got a lot of location check, and then barely by chance I stumbled into Desert Palace, and I opened the chest with the boots, and I was like, "Yay! What are those?" Oh my god! I went in like an hour later than I should. When the moment I saw the boots, I was like, "Yay! I won!" No, shoot, I didn't.
Yeah, I think I got the boots at the 1 and 9 minute mark, so I got them really late as well.
Well, I was like, what, an hour and 20? I don't remember actually. But yeah, I was there pretty late.
Yeah.
And that's it. I actually, even more than that, I feel like I executed really poorly. Even since the early game, I was getting hit by a lot of monsters, so I don't think that was that important. But yeah, it took a lot of time.
That's what it came down to in the seed. Both of you routed well. It's just that SDiezal just happened to outplay you a bit. And
Yeah.
sometimes, especially in very linear seeds, execution makes all the difference.
Yeah, it definitely helped out having silvers like off the bat. Like, I don't care what your skill level is. If you get early silvers, it's gonna make the rest of your run just so much easier.
Yeah, then I got bloodthirsty and I was shooting everything in my way.
That's easy to do, though.
Yeah, I was pretty much the same. Like I was telling, Raikau and our commentators, like just how linear the seed felt. Like once you like, it really felt into place, and you go from one area to the next, and it kind of just guided you along the way until you got to, needing the Titan's Mitt, and it kind of forced you into branching off from just going from crystal to crystal to crystal. And then eventually finally saying, okay, go look for your final item, and then you can be in go mode. So my go mode item was Titans. I would assume it was yours as well.
Yeah, it was actually the same. I think that was so linear that you were doing exactly the same things that I did, but sooner.
Yeah.
That's a great way to summarize this race.
There were a couple little divergences. Yuveling, you checked Hera, SDiezal didn't. You also did the early trip up to Waterfall and Zora, while SDiezal just routed in with Catfish. So those couple things made a little bit of the difference up, but
Yeah.
other than that, it was almost the same.
I think that was all like a minute and a half, maybe more, and he went ahead a lot by that.
Yeah, it helped when we got Mirror to route that in. I was hoping to find Mirror before I head up to, because we got really early flippers. I was hoping to find Mirror so I could route that in all together and not have to do 2 separate trips up to Zora and the Waterfall and etc. But yeah, GG, Yuveling. This was a fantastic seed.
Yeah, thank you. Same GG to you. I had a lot of fun. It was actually a really good seed, and I really liked it. So I don't care. The losses. Well, I'm 1-3 right now, so I'm pretty much off the playoffs. So it's okay. It's fine. Well, I wish you really the best of lucks.
Oh, thank you, dude. Yeah, you can play upset for the rest of Swiss here.
Yeah, I'm just going to relax, chill, have fun.
Sounds good.
And with that, do either of the two of you have any words to share with us about the seed, other than what you've shared?
I mean, just for me, it was really good again, and I look forward to the rest of Swiss. Hopefully, I can win it out.
I'm pretty much out of words, so your call.
And so with that, I think I will actually take a look at our schedule for tomorrow. We have a pretty jam-packed schedule for you for our round 4 coverage of the Link to the Past Randomizer tournament. Going on right now, it looks like we had a race just start between Who42 Baker and Cursed Aether. That is over on Speed Gaming. And then tomorrow we have a couple of races going on in the morning at 10 a.m. We have a race between Hitsuyan 1337 and Proa 007 on Speed Gaming 3. And we have another race going on between Act the Boker and Karnath FD on Speed Gaming 5. At 11 o'clock, we have a match on Speed Gaming 2 between Yume Tsubasa and Hunter Seeker 42. At noon, we have a match between Arija and Sonicam at Speed Gaming 4. That's at 12 noon. We have Justin Z versus Arboretic on Speed Gaming 5 at 1 p.m. That should be a great match as well. And then we have some evening matches as well. At 8 o'clock p.m. tomorrow, here on Speed Gaming 5, we have Cryptix and Murphy0749. Over at Speed Gaming 2, we have Tiro and Villagen. And then at 10 o'clock, we have Glentai and Gonspore on Speed Gaming 3. So that is all of our matches for tomorrow. And if you have nothing else to say, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you, everyone. See you later.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for Carissa, our tracker. Thank you for Mentos and Raiko Ryder for commentary, and Speed Gaming for the tournament. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Good night, everyone.